Well, Toli, the president of the ANC is in this hotel where the ANC National Executive Committee is actually meeting. Their meeting only started after 6 o'clock. It was meant to start at 4:30, but it didn't start. Lots of them arrived very, very late. So the meeting started only after 6 o'clock. And of course, we're expecting to hear from them in a couple of hours' time. But if the last meeting is anything to go by, we may be here around midnight or even beyond. Of course, at stake are the very same issues that Julius Malema mentioned, and of course more, because they have to take a decision before tomorrow morning, because tomorrow morning the National Assembly, of course, has to meet and among other things elect a president, a speaker, and a deputy speaker. But to help me go through some of the issues that are going to be discussed that are being discussed at this meeting, which is about a few floors up, is of course Asanda Ngoasheng, who is a political analyst. Asanda, we both went into that meeting, and in the few minutes that they gave us to take some pictures and to say hi and get a sense, a lot of bravado, I would say, for a party that has to discuss very serious issues on the back of a very poor performance in the elections.
Well, I think that, what's interesting is to see the very somber faces of the members of the ANC who are sitting to discuss. I think it's very clear to everybody that this is a serious issue and that this is D-Day. And I think that, if you think about all the press briefings that have been going on throughout the day, one of the most difficult things they're going to have to do potentially is to explain to South Africa why they would choose to go and be in partnership with the Democratic Alliance, considering all of the issues that we've experienced in South Africa and what South Africans feel about the Democratic Alliance. And I think, this is part of what Julius Malema was talking to. But I think, we can't take lightly how difficult that decision to go and engage the DA must have been. And when I listen to the EFF, when I listen to Umkhonto weSizwe, I actually understand how they would have gotten to that decision, because we are hearing an EFF and an MK that doesn't seem to have much interest in actually ensuring that there is a government by next week in South Africa. They are more interested in making sure that what they want as political parties comes to be, and the kind of people that they want to be in power in the kind of positions that they're demanding are the ones who are in power. And that is what has been saddest for me to observe: political parties who have the opportunity to do good for South Africa actively ignoring that and rejecting it, instead opting for their own petty politics and their own selfish interests. And I think, for me, this is going to be a moment that we're going to go back to time and time again as South Africans, to ask the question of how did we end up with this type of politicians, and how did we end up with this type of politics?
Of course, the people who are meeting upstairs, there's a lot of them in that room who do not support the idea of going to bed with the Democratic Alliance.
Yeah, of course, the ANC always reminds us that they are a church and they have all kinds of ideologies within them. We know that within them is the left and the extreme left, and within them is the right and the extreme right. And in fact, if you think about what has been happening with all these breakaways, is that certain ideologies have chosen to move away. But if you understand history, you'll know that back in the day, this happened with the PAC. When people who were members of the ANC were unhappy with the ANC and its ideologies, they moved on to form the PAC. Same thing happened with the IFP as well, and we saw it with COPE, we've seen it with UDM, and we've seen it most recently with the MK. So the ANC is not new to having conversations and engagements with people who don't agree with it, and still coming out with something that is a semblance of what I think is potentially going to be the best solution for South Africa. And I think, with the experience that they have, a lot of the people who are in that room were there in 1994 when the first government of national unity was put together. And so we're talking about people who are seasoned negotiators and who have done this before. And so hopefully this means that they will be even more astute this time in the kind of decisions that they make. And hopefully it also means that they're not going to make the same mistakes and they're not going to give up the same things that people have been complaining about. But I just want to highlight something, Vuyo, which is that I've been hearing a lot of people talk about, the ANC has missed an opportunity for a black government. And this has been fascinating to me because we have always had the opportunity of a black government. In the past elections, the ANC had an absolute majority and was able to do whatever it wanted legislatively, and we saw what they did. And so there isn't anything new that could have been done that wasn't done. And the EFF itself, at some point when the ANC started dropping in its support base, had enough power to add to theirs to give them the absolute majority to be able to implement these things, and they didn't. And in fact, if you remember, when the issue of land expropriation without compensation came up, the ANC did table, a proposal, and the EFF rejected it, saying it wasn't radical enough. Whereas one would have hoped that they would have taken that as a kind of foundation to start the conversation, and then made sure that in future we have this conversation about how does it look like, or how will it look like for South Africa to be able to get back its land, because we know realistically that the global economy is not going to take kindly to land expropriation without compensation. We have the example of Zimbabwe, which has shown us. We have the example of everything that's happening now with Palestine and Israel. At its heart is land and who owns that land. So this is not as simple a situation and a conversation as people are making it up to be. And it's quite frustrating for me because I'm usually the person that is, vehemently against some of what the ANC is saying, but I'm finding myself agreeing a lot with them because they're being practical, they're being pragmatic, and they're being realistic, which is something that I think is missing, particularly in the EFF. When I listened to Julius Malema, I did not hear somebody who's ready to govern, and I'm wondering if the young people who voted for him in the overwhelming numbers feel like they are being represented truly now, or if they feel they're being betrayed. Same with the MK. I listened to somebody on the radio on my way here, and one person was saying that they're disappointed, that they gave their vote to the MK with the belief, with the hope, and the understanding that they were going to go to Parliament and they were going to, bring about change, but now they are rejecting that. And so while we look at, will the MK be there, won't the MK be there, and its political implications, I'm interested in how will the people who voted for them respond to this rejection, A, but B, I'm interested in when they call people, which I think they are. I won't be surprised if they're planning a July 2021 or some such, but the question is, will the people rise up in the same way that they did in July 2021, or have people learned from July 2021, where more than 50 billion rand was lost, where more than 300 lives were lost, that, sometimes you need to engage with these things differently than we did during apartheid.
Asanda Ngoasheng, we are, of course, going to be waiting here only for the ANC to finish that meeting, whereafter they said they will come, the Secretary General, Fikile Mbalula, will then come and speak to us and update us on whatever decisions they will have taken tonight, of course, being D-Day, because those decisions are going to influence, affect, or dictate even what is going to happen in the National Assembly come tomorrow. For now, though, it's back to you in the studio.
Vuyo Mvoko, thank you very much. Live for us there in the venue of the ANC special NEC meeting.